3 weeks after I lost my wife, I moved through each day like I was following instructions somebody else had left behind for me. Wake up, walk the shore, eat because I should, sit on the porch until dark, pour a drink I didn't even want, go to bed, start again. The cottage had belonged to my uncle before me, a small weathered place on a quiet stretch of coast where the houses sat far enough apart to give you privacy, but close enough that you still heard doors shut and screens bang at night. I came there because nobody expected anything from me there. Back home, people kept looking at me like I was either about to break down or supposed to be getting better. I had no interest in either. I was 32 and tired in a way sleep didn't touch. The first time I saw her, I was coming back from the beach with my shoes in one hand and sand stuck to my ankles. She was near the waterline in a red two-piece, sunglasses on, one hand on her hip, watching her little girl chase foam at the edge of the surf. I noticed her because any man would have. I kept looking because she noticed me noticing. "Eyes up here," she called without raising her voice. I looked at her face. "That sounds fair." Her mouth twitched like she hadn't expected that answer. "Good. We understand each other." There was nothing soft in the way she said it. She wasn't fishing for attention. If anything, she looked like a woman already braced for disappointment and fully prepared to cut it off before it reached her. Her daughter ran up holding a crooked shell in both hands. "Mama, look. It looks like a tiny ear." The woman glanced down, and her whole face changed for half a second. Less guarded. Lighter. "That's because it is creepy." "It's not creepy," the little girl said, offended. "It's beach creepy," her mother corrected. I kept walking. That should have been it. But all the way back to my cottage, I kept thinking about the difference between the woman's voice when she spoke to me and the way it changed when she answered her daughter. Later that afternoon, I was tightening a loose hinge on my screen door when I heard a small voice behind me. "Do you know how to fix everything?" I turned and found the girl from the beach standing 3 steps away, serious as a tax auditor. She had damp curls, a purple bucket in one hand, and the kind of direct stare only kids can manage. "Not even close," I said. "This door's just making me look better than I am." She considered that. "My name is Emma." I told her mine. She nodded toward the hinge. "Mama says men always think they know what they're doing before they do." I almost laughed. "Your mama sounds experienced." That was when I heard the next door screen slap open. "Emma," her mother said. Not loud, not harsh, but immediate. The girl turned. I was just asking him about doors. Her mother walked over, barefoot now, denim shorts over the swimsuit, an old white button-down hanging loose over her shoulders. Up close, she looked around 40, maybe a little younger, with the kind of face that didn't need softness to be striking. "Pretty, yeah? But sharp too. Controlled." "Sorry," she said to me, though it didn't sound like apology came naturally to her. She adopts people fast. "It was one question," I said. Emma lifted a finger. "Two." That got the smallest real smile out of her mother. I noticed it. She noticed me noticing it. "Come on," she told Emma. Then, to me, "Thanks for not teaching her bad habits. Too early in the acquaintance." That earned me a dry look over her shoulder. "We'll see." Over the next few days, Emma became the reason we kept crossing paths. She wanted to know why gulls screamed, why the tide kept stealing her sand walls, why my porch sat lower on one side, why I drank coffee black. She asked questions the way some people breathe. Her mother watched all of it carefully. I learned her name was Cynthia. I learned the cottage had been her grandmother's. I learned Emma still checked the beach every morning for the same orange crab she'd decided belonged to her. I learned Cynthia thanked people like she expected them to turn the bill over afterward. One morning Emma tripped on a splintered board near the steps between the dunes and sliced the side of her foot. Not deep, but enough to bring fast tears. I carried her back, while Cynthia grabbed towels and the first aid kit. Emma clung to my neck, trying hard not to cry harder than she already was. "It stings," she whispered. "I know." Cynthia knelt in front of us on her porch while I held the towel against Emma's heel. Her hands were steady. Her jaw wasn't. "You didn't have to carry her," she said quietly. "She's 6. Cynthia glanced up at me then, like she was trying to measure whether that answer had something hidden inside it. When she found nothing, something in her shoulders loosened. That evening, just after sunset, I was sitting on my porch with a glass in my hand when I heard her voice from the dark between our cottages. "I made too much pasta," Cynthia said. "And Emma's already decided you like garlic bread." I looked over. She was holding a bottle of wine by the neck. expression guarded even now, like she might still take the whole invitation back if I answered wrong. Behind one screen door, Emma shouted, "He does like it." I can tell. For the first time in weeks, something in my chest shifted. Not fixed, not healed, just moved. I stood up. Then I probably shouldn't disappoint her. Cynthia gave one slow nod. 7 o'clock. And don't make me regret being neighborly. I'll do my best. She started back toward her door, then paused. That's usually what worries me when men say it. And then she went inside. I stood there a long moment, listening to the water and the muffled sound of Emma talking too fast for anyone to interrupt her, and realized the door next door wasn't open wide. But it wasn't closed anymore. Dinner turned into a habit before either of us admitted it was becoming one. That first night, Emma talked through half a plate of pasta and all of the garlic bread she'd apparently assigned to me. She told me about the orange crab, about a teacher she didn't like because he smelled like sad paper, and about how her mother made better pancakes than anyone except maybe one cartoon bear. Cynthia rolled her eyes through most of it, but I could see she was watching me more than she was eating. Not in a suspicious way exactly. More like she was waiting to find out whether I was temporary. After that, things got easier without ever getting simple. Some mornings I'd find Emma on the sand, already building something crooked and ambitious. Some evenings Cynthia would lean against the dividing fence with a glass of wine, and that dry look she wore whenever she was half relaxed and didn't want to be caught enjoying herself. I fixed a warped cabinet door in her kitchen, replaced a loose porch plank that had nearly taken Emma down again. Once I drove them into town because Cynthia's car wouldn't start, and Emma insisted on sitting in the back like we were going on a major expedition instead of buying groceries and batteries. Somewhere in all of that, the cottage next door stopped feeling like the place where other people lived. It started feeling like part of my day. One morning Emma was sitting on my porch steps in one of Cynthia's oversized sweatshirts, eating melon from a bowl and kicking her bare heels against the wood. "You were sad before," she said. "Kids can do that." Drop something heavy in the most casual voice in the world. I sat beside her with my coffee. "Yeah. You still are." "Yeah." She took another bite. "But less by us." I looked out toward the water because it was easier than looking at her. "Maybe a little." She nodded like that settled it. Cynthia came out a minute later, saw us both there, and gave me that look again. That measuring look. But it wasn't as hard as it had been at the beginning. That night, after Emma fell asleep on the couch with a cartoon still playing softly, Cynthia and I sat on her porch under the yellow light by the screen door. The air smelled like salt and damp wood. She had her feet tucked under her, wine in hand, hair tied up in a loose knot that kept coming apart. "She likes you," she said. I noticed. "She doesn't do that with every man." I glanced at her. "That sounds specific." Cynthia let out a breath through her nose. "It is." For a second I thought she might stop there. She almost did. Then she looked down into her glass and said, "My ex-husband had a talent for making everything feel conditional." I didn't interrupt. That was probably why she kept going. He never had to yell much. He was better when he stayed calm. Her mouth tightened. Everything was a correction. The way I dressed. The way I laughed. The food I made. My body after Emma was born. How tired I was. How emotional I was. How not emotional I was. She gave a short, humorless smile. It was almost impressive. By the end, I could feel judged before he even opened his mouth. The porch stayed quiet except for the waves and a screen door rattling somewhere farther down the row of cottages. "I used to think I was confident," she said. "Then one day I realized I hadn't bought clothes I actually liked in 2 years. I was just buying things that wouldn't start a comment." I stared out into the dark. That kind of thing gets into your bones. Her head turned slightly. "You know that." "In a different way." She waited. So I told her enough. Not every detail. Just the true ones. About the hospital room. About the silence after. About how people kept saying I was strong when really I was just numb and too tired to argue. About how coming here wasn't brave or healing. It was just the only place I could think of where nobody would ask me to become myself again on schedule. When I finished, Cynthia didn't reach for me or say anything polished. She just sat there beside me, and that felt better than comfort would have. After a while she said quietly, "So you're not hiding here because you don't care." "No, you're hiding because you cared too much." I looked at her then. Something like that. She held my eyes for a second longer than usual, then looked away first. After that night, something shifted. Not into romance all at once. Into trust. She stopped second-guessing every invitation. Emma started treating my place like an extension of theirs, wandering over to show me shells, drawings, scraped knees, impossible questions. Cynthia got used to finding me nearby, and I got used to the sound of their screen door opening and closing like it belonged in the shape of my day. One evening, Emma fell asleep with her head in my lap, while we were all watching a movie neither of us adults cared about. Cynthia stood in the kitchen doorway, arms folded loosely, looking at us with an expression I couldn't read at first. Then I realized what it was. Not fear exactly. More like disbelief that something could feel peaceful without asking for payment later. She walked over quietly and lifted Emma into her arms. The kid barely stirred. Cynthia looked down at her daughter, then back at me. "Stay for one glass of wine," she said softly. It wasn't flirtation. Not really. It was something bigger than that. And sitting there after Emma was asleep, listening to the tide and the clink of Cynthia's glass against the porch rail, I understood that somewhere along the way, the two people next door had stopped being a distraction from my life. The night things changed, it didn't happen because either of us planned it. It happened because Emma slipped on the wet rocks near the tide pools just before sunset and banged her knee hard enough to scare herself more than hurt herself. I was a few yards away when she cried out. Cynthia was there a second later, but I got to Emma first and lifted her before she could try standing on a shaky leg. "I'm okay," Emma said, already crying. "That's usually how people say they're not," I told her. Cynthia knelt in the sand and checked the scrape. "Can you bend it for me?" Emma tried, winced, and reached for my shirt instead. That tiny movement did something to Cynthia's face. Not jealousy, not discomfort, just that same startled look I'd seen before, like some part of her still couldn't get used to finding me there when something real was happening. We got Emma back to the cottage, cleaned the scrape, put ice on it, and let her choose dinner, which meant buttered noodles and apple slices arranged in a circle for reasons known only to 6-year-olds. By 9, she was asleep sideways across her bed, one sock on, one gone. Cynthia and I ended up on the porch again. That had become our place without either of us naming it. Same 2 chairs, same stretch of dark water ahead of us, same careful distance that had started to feel less careful every night. "She reached for you first," Cynthia said. I looked over. She was scared. I know. She wrapped both hands around her glass. That's not what I meant. The air between us shifted. I didn't rush to fill it. I'd learned that with her. If I pushed, she pulled back. If I stayed still, she eventually told the truth. "She trusts you," Cynthia said. "And I keep trying to act like that doesn't matter as much as it does. It matters to me too." She gave a small nod, staring out toward the beach. "You know what's annoying?" "A long list, probably." That got a quiet laugh out of her. "Very long list. But right now? It's that I feel calmer around you than I do around almost anybody, and that should not be happening this fast." I turned my glass slowly in my hand. Nothing about this has felt fast to me. Her eyes moved to mine then. No. I let that sit there. It's felt like watching someone open one lock at a time. She held my gaze. Didn't look away. "And what happens," she asked softly, "when you get to the last one?" I don't know if it was the question or the way she said it, but something in me that had been shut down for weeks, maybe months, finally moved all the way awake. I set my glass down. "I'm still figuring that out." She looked at my mouth, then back at my eyes. It was such a small thing, but after everything between us, it felt louder than a confession. So I gave her a chance to stop it. I leaned in slowly. She met me halfway. The kiss was quiet. No drama. No performance. Just the feeling of two people who had both been holding back for so long that the first honest touch landed deeper than either of us expected. When I pulled back, Cynthia kept her forehead close to mine for a second, eyes closed, breathing unevenly. "This is a bad time for my life to get complicated," she whispered. I almost smiled. "Feels like it already is." She opened her eyes. There was warmth there, and fear, and something that looked dangerously close to hope. "You make me forget to be careful." "I don't want that." That surprised her. "I want you to feel safe enough that you don't have to perform careful all the time," I said. For a second, she just looked at me. Then she touched my face with the back of her fingers, like she was testing whether I was real. The next morning, the complication arrived. I was fixing the latch on my window when I heard a car door shut hard next door. Not the usual sound out here. Too sharp. Too deliberate. I looked through the screen and saw a dark sedan parked crooked in Cynthia's gravel drive. The man getting out looked polished in the kind of effortless way that usually takes effort. Button-down shirt, watch that caught the light, clean shoes completely wrong for sand. He smiled before he even reached the porch. Cynthia was already outside. I could tell from her posture alone that something had gone wrong. She wasn't just tense. She was braced. Emma stood half behind her leg, quiet in a way I had never seen from her. The man crouched slightly, all concern and patience. "Hey, kiddo, you got taller." Emma didn't move. He rose and said something to Cynthia I couldn't hear. She answered without stepping aside. I didn't go over. Not yet. It wasn't my moment to claim. But I stayed where I could be seen if she looked. A minute later she did. Just one glance toward my cottage. His eyes followed hers. That was when he noticed me. The smile he gave me was smooth and empty. The kind men use when they want to appear reasonable while measuring whether you're a problem. He left 20 minutes later. No shouting. No scene. That was probably the worst part. That evening Cynthia came to my door instead of waiting for the porch. "He says he wants to be more involved," she said before I could speak. "With Emma. He says he's in a better place now. He says he wants to repair things." I stepped aside to let her in, but she stayed where she was. "Do you believe him?" I asked. Her laugh had no humor in it. "I believe he wants access. I believe he wants to stand in my doorway and make me feel 16 versions smaller." She folded her arms tight. And the really pathetic part is that it still works for a minute. Every time. There's nothing pathetic about old damage responding the way it was trained to. Her face changed when I said that. Softer for a moment. Then closed again. "He saw you," she said. "I know. That makes this worse." I let the words land without fighting them. She needed room for fear more than I needed reassurance. "Cynthia." She shook her head. "I can't do this right now. I can't have him circling back, and also," her voice caught. "Also this. Not when I finally let myself feel it." She looked wrecked by that admission. I kept my voice even. "I'm not asking you for anything tonight." "That's not fair," she said quietly, almost angry now. "You keep being decent when it would be easier if you weren't. Sorry to disappoint you." That pulled the faintest breath of a laugh out of her, then vanished. She looked at me for a long second, eyes bright but controlled. "I need space." "Okay. And I need you not to disappear." That one hit me in the chest. "I won't," I said. Cynthia nodded once, like she was making herself trust only that sentence and no more than that, then turned and walked back into the dark. For the next few days, she pulled back exactly the way she said she would. Shorter conversations. Fewer porch nights. Careful distance. But I stayed. I still fixed the broken outdoor light when it went out. Still brought cough medicine when Emma woke up hoarse. Still answered the door when Cynthia knocked just to ask if I had a screwdriver and clearly needed 5 minutes of steady breathing more than a tool. I didn't push. I didn't sulk. I didn't make her fear carry my feelings too. And little by little, I could see it registering. Whatever she had known before me, whatever kind of man he had trained her to expect, I was not repeating it. I was still there. The next week showed me exactly what kind of man Cynthia had spent years dealing with. He never came in loud. He came in polished. His name was Alex. He called ahead sometimes, showed up other times without warning, always dressed like he had somewhere better to be afterward. He spoke to Cynthia in that maddeningly calm voice men use when they want witnesses to think they're the reasonable one. He talked about being present, about structure, about what was best for Emma. He talked like a brochure for good intentions. And Emma hated when his car pulled in. She didn't throw fits. That would have been easier to explain away. She just went quiet, stayed closer to Cynthia, asked more often whether they were going somewhere later, whether they had to have dinner at home, whether I was around. Kids tell the truth with their bodies long before they say it out loud. One afternoon, I was on my porch sanding down a rough edge on the railing when Alex came over in loafers that sank into the gravel. He stopped at the bottom step and gave me that same smooth smile. "You're the neighbor," he said. "That's usually where I live." He let out a fake laugh. "Alex." I didn't offer my hand. "I know." His eyes flicked over me, measuring. "Cynthia says you've been helpful. She's had a few things around the place." "Right." He slid both hands into his pockets. "It's good she has support. She can get overwhelmed." There it was. Small enough to sound harmless. Sharp enough to do damage if you knew where to place it. I looked at him for a second. Funny. She seemed strongest when people stopped talking over her. The smile thinned. He nodded once like he was filing me away for later, then turned and headed back next door. That evening, Cynthia came over after Emma was asleep, arms folded tight across herself. He's talking about formal visitation. Maybe more than that. I set my glass down. Do you think he means it? I think he means money, paperwork, pressure, whatever keeps me unsteady. She stared at the floorboards. And the stupid thing is, part of me still reacts like I'm supposed to defend myself before he's even said anything real. I stepped closer, but not too close. Then don't do it alone. Her eyes lifted to mine. Tired, angry, ashamed that she was ashamed. He knows exactly where to press, she said quietly. He makes everything sound so clean. Like I'm difficult, emotional, chaotic, and he's just trying to help. Ever met a reasonable person who was actually a monster? Tell me your story in the comments. That story falls apart the longer people look at it. She laughed once without humor. You have a lot of faith. No, I have eyes. That was the moment something changed in her again. Not because I said anything brilliant. Because I didn't speak to her like she was fragile or confused. I spoke to her like she already knew the truth and just needed somewhere steady to stand while she faced it. Over the next several days, the cracks in Alex's act opened fast. He forgot the time of a school meeting he himself had demanded to attend. He promised Emma a Saturday outing, then canceled because something had come up. He brought expensive gifts she barely touched and still couldn't remember the name of the stuffed rabbit she slept with every night. Once, standing in Cynthia's kitchen, he said, "I'm trying here," with enough self-pity in his voice that even Emma looked at him like he was missing the point on purpose. Then came the final push. He arrived one morning with a tight smile and a folder in his hand, full of printouts and plans, and the kind of language meant to scare a person before anything had even started. Cynthia went pale when she saw it. I was outside fixing the garden hose and watched her shoulders draw in like an old reflex had grabbed the wheel. But this time she didn't fold. She looked at the folder, looked at him, then said, very clearly, "If you want to be in Emma's life, then be in her life. Show up. Learn her routines. Stop performing fatherhood like it's a debate you can win. But if this is about punishing me because I build a calm home without you in it, then you can save the paper." Alex stared at her. I think he expected tears, or panic, or bargaining. What he got was clarity. Emma came to the doorway behind her mother and stayed there, small hand gripping Cynthia's shirt. Alex looked down at his daughter and did something that told me everything. He got irritated. Not hurt. Not moved. Irritated. The expression flashed and vanished, but it was enough. Cynthia saw it too. So did Emma. And just like that, his whole polished act lost its shine. He tried one more round of careful words, one more attempt to make Cynthia sound unstable and himself sound noble, but it was weaker now because nobody in that yard believed him anymore. Not even him, I think. He left with the folder still tucked under his arm. After that, the calls slowed, then stopped. No grand ending. No dramatic collapse. Just a man losing interest when control stopped being easy. A few nights later, Cynthia came onto my porch after putting Emma to bed. She didn't speak right away. She just stood there in the salt air, hair loose, cardigan hanging open, looking lighter than I'd seen her since the day I met her. "I kept seeing myself through his eyes," she said at last. "Even after he was gone. I thought that was just permanent." I stood up. "And now?" She stepped closer. "Now I think he was wrong for so long that I started borrowing his voice and calling it mine." I touched her face gently. "That voice was never yours." Her eyes filled, but she smiled anyway. Real smile. No defense in it. Then she kissed me. Not hesitant this time. Not borrowed. Chosen. A week after that, the three of us walked the beach at sunset, Emma running ahead with her bucket, yelling that she'd found the orange crab again, even though it was probably a different one. Cynthia slid her hand into mine like it belonged there. Simple as that. I looked at the water, at the child racing the tide, at the woman beside me, and felt something I had honestly stopped expecting from my life. Not replacement. Not rescue. Just a second chance that none of us had been handed. A second life we had fought our way into. And for the first time since I lost my wife, the future did not feel like something I was surviving. It felt like something I could walk toward.